Welcome to Sense1 subscribers, and today we're doing a versus video as you've probably seen from the thumbnail. Today we're doing Shunsui versus Byakuya. So I chose this pair because it is a highly contentious topic in the fanbase, and there's definitely a narrative connection here as well. When looking back at the stat sheets from the first data book, Byakuya and Shunsui are essentially almost across the board the same. I haven't done many 1v1 matches on the channel, so maybe I'll do more of these. And this is how I do my versus matchups, okay? I do not like wanking characters, nor do I like downplays. They irritate me. I try to shoot fair assessments. For example, in my Stark vs Ulquiorra video, I did not use any of the wild scaling that gets Res 2 Ulquiorra up to Aizen level threat, or even to like Vasto Lord Ichigo. I will try my best to reduce speculation when it comes to feats or skill. Speculation should be saved for the combative parts of the video. Feats will be given their full context, so, things are taken strictly on face value because that can lead to downplays or winks. This fight will be taking place in an abandoned city on the outskirts of Seirete, so no one is around, not even Nanao. Watch out for spoilers for both Thousand Year Blood War and the novels, okay? Spiritual pressure. So, spiritual pressure kicking off probably the most important aspect of a fight between Soul Reapers. Spiritual pressure for this will be shorthanded into SP when I use it. As I did before, we're going to have to scale the characters off of who they have fought in order to get an idea of where they scale towards each other. Mainly because Kubo doesn't ever give us exact numbers, nor does he ever tell us who's actually stronger than who. For Shunsui and Byakuya, I will reference statements from Campfire World only and not use fights, as the lore information came from Kubo and the fights and conversations were the portrayal of Narita. So both men fought elite guardsmen, who are stronger than the rest of the Stern Ritter. I think base Lie is stronger than base Gerard, but that's just my personal prerogative, and it doesn't affect this too much. So starting off with this, Byakuya kills Gerard in his base while using Bankai. The first time Gerard evolves, he is capable of both tagging and damaging Byakuya, and is also capable of batting away Senbonzakura Kagayoshi with no damage to himself. That establishes clear relativity in SP. Later, Gerard declares himself the biggest, strongest, and fastest Quincy in chapter 668, after he gets an enhanced arm. Normally, a self-aggrandizing statement isn't enough to go on, except in Gerard's case, his shrift literally makes him stronger based on the damage he takes. In this case, we have a Bankai Byakuya capable of blocking palm strikes from said Gerard, but at the same time, Gerard is capable of blocking Senbonzakura Kagayoshi and swatting it away with no damage to himself. There is still a clear level of relativity here, but Gerard is stronger as he isn't being damaged by the pedals when he hits them. When Gerard goes into Vollständig, he doesn't actually ever have any direct combative encounter with Byakuya. The one interaction they do have is when Toshiro and Kenny help Byakuya by tripping and then freezing him so that Gerard can't fight back, and then Byakuya beheads him with Senbonzakura Kagayoshi Senkei Ikasenjika. That is a mouthful. Without the assistance, I don't think he actually would have landed the hit, and it might have assisted in doing damage. Then Gerard evolves again, and there's a bit of contention about this next feat, about what happens here, because the colored manga doesn't provide any clarity. It's not colored as if Senbonzakura blocked it, but it also doesn't make sense that Gerard couldn't smash the building in the picture, so I'll say he blocked it. Being able to resist a hit from it shows that Byakuya's Bankai is still relative here, but it must be on the lower end, because when Byakuya blocked attacks earlier, the pedals didn't scatter. Now in this panel, they scatter, as if they can't hold their form. However, I must say that this doesn't make much sense scaling-wise, as a weaker Gerard was performing well against the same Byakuya, so a much stronger Gerard should be demolishing. And the other caveat is the strength boosts for Gerard aren't clear. We know it's proportionate to the damage, but we don't know what the multiplier is. Moving on to Shunsui. Shunsui was capable of outpacing Leobaro and pressured him into using his Vollständig. Leobaro was incapable of resisting the game Shunsui was using, so we know he doesn't have more SP. Then Lie goes Vollständig and hits Shunsui with X-axis. Shunsui couldn't avoid this due to Leobaro's paralysis ability. Shunsui stated that his SP is so powerful that attacks from Lie would not knock him out nor kill him at the point in this panel here. Meaning he is still at least equal to his opponent, if not stronger. Shunsui then uses his Bankai to dominate and bypass Leobaro's intangibility. Whether this was due to spiritual pressure negging or the special properties of his Bankai, we don't know exactly. However, I side with the uniqueness of the Zanpakuto, so I don't think he was suppressing Lie's intangibility with his SP or anything like that. Meaning I don't think Shunsui became far stronger than Leobaro. Once Shunsui beheaded him and deactivated his Bankai, he took another shot and was capable of moving around from an even more powerful Lie. Again, meaning that Shunsui's spiritual powers were strong enough to keep him alive against attacks from Lie. Now the issue comes down honestly at how powerful is Gerard compared to Liebaro. Gerard in his enhanced state before using Vollständig claimed to be the most powerful than any other Quincy. But we don't know if he meant that because Liebaro was dead at this point, or was making his assessment from Lie's strongest form. He also doesn't even give us any relative term on how much more powerful he actually was. Gerard states he's never been this big before when referring to his first enhanced size, so I imagine he's comparing it to Liebaro's Vollständig. He may have knowledge of that form, but not the dragon form he took after he was killed. And Shunsui didn't seem incapable of fighting that dragon form either. He could have still been relative to that final Liebaro, we just don't know because of how the fight turned out. We also have a statement from Kent Fingerwell that I think ties this all together pretty well. Shunsui states Byakuya to be relative to the other noble clan leaders like Tokunada, and he sort of admits that they're stronger than himself, but not strong enough that he himself cannot defeat them. On the whole, I think Byakuya had more relative feats to a being who was arguably stronger than Liebaro, but if I use that Can't Fear a World statement that takes place 6 months after those fights, so the Zenkai boost would be the same, I get a more solid look at their power. I give Byakuya the decisive edge in spiritual pressure. Speed. When it comes to speed, the same arguments I use with Gerard can be made here in Byakuya's favor. Byakuya's speed with Shunpo and reaction capabilities seem to allow him to keep pace with Gerard. Gerard also being distracted by other fighters so his attention wasn't always on Byakuya allowed for some cool off-guard feats. When on guard or even off guard, Gerard was capable of tagging Byakuya and defending himself against Byakuya's attack, so it wasn't like Byakuya was ever perception blitzing Gerard. Gerard also does mention his size makes it a bit more difficult to hit him. Now this isn't a downplay because this is consistent with stuff we've seen earlier in Bleach. When Yami Largo gets his Zero form, he notes that he has a hard time hitting people who are smaller than him, despite him still having pretty decent speed, being able to even tag Ichigo. Shunsui himself has impressive speed. It must be stated that comparatively to Byakuya, Shunsui getting hit is almost exclusively on circumstance and not due to being pressed. So against Lie, it must be noted that Lie never touched Shunsui until Lie used his shrift to free Shunsui so that he could hit him. What's even more impressive is that Shunsui was capable of dodging and evading Liebaro for a considerable amount of time, despite Liebaro in his Vollständig state being capable of teleportation and his X-axis shrift being instantaneous deletion. Meaning Shunsui has to always be able to see, understand, and react to wherever Lie is pointing and able to dodge him. And until he got off-guarded by third form Lie, he actually didn't get hit. So down an eye with a severe wound to his leg, he was capable of outpacing Vollständig Lie, which shows superior speed and reaction to that character. And even more impressive, he was capable of still reacting to third form Lie with life-threatening wounds like his midsection being blown out. Gerard is the fastest Quincy, yes, but his size hinders him and he is still capable of hitting Byakuya. So Byakuya isn't faster than Gerard. This shows they are much slower in speed comparative to each other, while Lie being fast in his own right was slower than Shunsui, and was only capable of hitting him while freezing him in place. There is more to factor in when it comes to speed, but I'll cover that later in the Zanpakuto section. So for pure speed and Shunpo, Byakuya gets the edge. Durability and endurance. I like to put these two categories together because with spiritual energy, they kind of do come together. Shunsui Kyōraku doesn't get hurt often in the series, but when he does, it doesn't honestly matter. Shunsui had his eye shot out and didn't hinder his combat effectiveness seemingly in the slightest. He had severe wounds to his leg and shoulder and was still capable of outpacing Lie. And with his stomach blown out, he was still capable of moving and could brace Nanao against Lie's strongest attack. This is important because both of her legs were damaged in this scene so severely that she still needed a cane years after that fight. So Shunsui was doing most of the heavy lifting when it came to blocking that attack. With Shunsui, it is a death blow or nothing. Byakuya Kuchiki, because of his massive spirit energy, is seemingly just as hardy. He is capable of taking severe damage and can continue to fight. He has impressively severed his own tendon in his leg and kept using Shunpo at an effective speed. He gets beat up pretty severely at several points in the series, yet he is capable of keeping his composure and fighting on. I don't see either really having a real advantage here. However, only Shunsui of the two has feats of fighting while having vital organs removed from his body. But Byakuya's SP being higher grants him more leeway and vitality, so I think it's a draw. I don't think either fighter will tire out first, nor do I think one can wound their opponent to death, so it's either kill or nothing. This is a draw. Martial skill. When it comes to full martial skill, I don't think this is that close. Byakuya Kuchiki has displayed fantastic sword skill in the series, and he mixes in his Kido with his sword to perform devastating combos, right? And as displayed against Shuhei, his Hakuda, he could take down an opponent with a sword when he himself doesn't have one. But Kubo goes out of his way to show just how terrifying Shunsui Kyōraku is in martial arts. Shunsui is an expert with not just one blade, but with two blades, the katana and the wakizashi. He is equally dexterous with both hands. He was under the tutelage of Yamamoto, who created his own sword style as well as mastering Zanjutsu and Kendo. And his familial lineage is that of martial artists. His Hakuda is impressive as he performed a named technique in the Hakuda tree where he imbues his physical combat with spirit energy to create more devastating blows. But truly, his biggest advantage is his martial arts philosophy. Shunsui is willing to do almost anything to win a fight and isn't as honor-bound as Byakuya within the boundaries of combat, at least, so I think this goes clearly to Shunsui Kyōraku. Kido. Keeping Kido short and sweet, I don't believe either user has any real advantage in this department. Shunsui of the two combatants has performed the highest level Hado feat at 78. The highest that Byakuya has done is 33 with Sokatsui. Now don't let the low number fool you though. Byakuya gets massive destructive capabilities out of this. He produced a Sokatsui the size of Yami that knocked the Zero Espada over. He is also capable of using Danku, Bakudo number 81, which blocks anything from the 89 in the Hado tree down. Okay. Now, defensively for Shunsui, I think his high Kido skill and his spiritual pressure would allow him to really counter anything that Byakuya throws at him. So I think this is a draw. Battle IQ. Byakuya Kuchiki is very analytical when he fights. He is always observing something and seems to always have a plan of attack when moving forward. When Byakuya wins his on-screen fights, it's usually through a measured attack as opposed to just brute force or power. He used a quick combination of sword technique, Zanpakuto, and Kido to stop Ichigo so he could land a killing blow. He used Renji's own Bankai against him twice in their fight. He improvised a way to get around Tsukishima's Book of the End, while Tsukishima knew all of Byakuya's formal techniques. He even guessed that Kido would stop Zomari's Amor ability, and he was right about it. Byakuya is always observant about what goes on inside and outside of battle. However, his anger can cloud his judgment in a fight and can cause him to be reckless over what he considers to be dishonorable behavior. Shunsui, as stated, will do anything to win, and I think this may play in his favor. And fascinatingly, Shunsui's Zanpakuto forces him to be a masterful tactician. Numerous games with varying rules that he may or may not have access to at certain times kind of forces Shunsui to always be on guard and always coming up with new tactics on the fly. He even goes as far as shedding clothes in order to change the color ratio to maximize damage in the middle of an intense blade exchange while doubling it as a distraction. He can seamlessly transition from game to game, making it look like as if he's playing multiple games at the same time. He is always expectant of others to play similar tricks while fighting, when he assumed that Stark was lying about the fact that his guns could only shoot Zero bullets. Byakuya admits that he doesn't improvise much in a fight, but he is very much capable of doing so. But he does move forward generally with attack patterns. That's why Tsukishima was able to get one over on him. Plus, Shunsui has more experience battling than Byakuya does, and actively plays mind games while Byakuya does not. I give the edge to Shunsui Kyōraku in Battle IQ. Zanpakuto, Senbonzakura, and Senbonzakura Kageyoshi. Senbonzakura is pretty straightforward. It turns Byakuya's sword into thousands upon thousands of smaller petals that do cumulative massive damage when they're all directed by the hilt. His petals grew more numerous in the Thousand-Year Blood War, with his Shikai being mistaken for his Bankai. The Bankai form, Senbonzakura Kageyoshi, increases almost everything about it: speed, precision, power, maneuverability, numbers of blades. Senbonzakura Kageyoshi has other forms, like Gokei, for example, which surrounds the entire opponent and Byakuya himself, allowing the blades to attack the person all at once, basically imploding. Senkei, the true form of Senbonzakura Kageyoshi, all the blades form into Senbonzakura-shaped blades that double its killing power, and it surrounds himself and the opponent. It can be called as swords for Byakuya to use, or as moving projectiles with just a glance from Byakuya. Byakuya doesn't call them all at once, however, but when he does, it's called Ikasenjika. So just Gokei, but in Senkei form. Finally, he has Shukei Hakuteiken. I don't think Byakuya is likely to use this technique in this confrontation. However, it basically puts all of the attack and killing power of his Bankai into a single blade that he uses to strike down the opponent. Shunsui, Zanpakuto, Katen Kyōkotsu, and Katen Kyōkotsu Karamatsu Shinju. The Shikai become large dual swords that turns children's games into unbreakable binding battle rules. All players caught in Shunsui's Ryatsu, and so far it has 6 known abilities. Takeoni, a game that designates the highest person as the winner. The full results though of this game has never actually been seen. Shogama creates a spinning torrent of wind capable of attacking and distracting opponents. Hirooni. This game uses color proportions to determine the increase or decrease of damage based on the color's threat level to the person who is actually attacking. Kageoni allows anyone to step on their opponent's shadow and use it to either attack or hide in a shadow world. Kageokuri. By staring at your opponent's shadow, your opponent can create after images or clones of themselves and project them wherever they want. Shunsui was capable, just off of one glance, creating 5 clones at once. The better someone is at actually sensing spirit energy, the more convincing and real the clones become. Arumasan ga Koronda. I'm so sorry if I butchered that. The attacking person is marked as it. And when they attack, the opponent, which would normally be Shunsui in this moment, can travel along the path of Reishi created by the attack, allowing them to flank the person who is it or attacked. If the person that's not it is seen while moving, they die. However, this can be used in conjunction with Kageokuri to make clones to distract the it person, so the flank can succeed. This was so effective it caught Lie off guard that it forced him to use his intangibility because he couldn't dodge it. This misdirection slows opponents down, and this is what I mean that the speed advantage may not matter as much in this fight. Katen Kyōkotsu Karamatsu Shinju is a 4-stage Bankai that activates once the previous act has been satisfied. Act 1 shares wounds between opponents. Once all wounds are shared, the players who inflicted the wounds become poisoned in Act 2. Act 2's poison causes holes to pop up all over the body and they bleed profusely, which I imagine is also going on internally. Once the infection has taken hold of people who have caused damage, both combatants are thrown into the depths of freezing that don't seem to allow combatants to really move as it drains their spirit energy. If Shunsui so chooses, he can then wrap his spirit energy around his opponent's neck, bypassing their durability, and then using spirit energy to blow off their head, which for most characters is an insta-kill. Kubo did state in Club Outside that if either player dies at any point during the play, the Bankai stops. This means that Shunsui himself can still die during the Bankai. Talking about advantage for Zanpakuto, I think this should be obvious. Katen Kyōkotsu is broken, and despite its major weakness being his Zanpakuto's unwillingness to allow him to use all of his games at the start, I don't believe it's a hindrance here for 2 reasons. One, if he uses his full Shikai chant, he should get all of his powers based on comments made by Kubo and Club Outside, and Byakuya isn't likely to interrupt that. 2, against Lie, Shunsui went straight into Shikai without even saying a chant, and he got access to all of his games. And it probably had to do with Lie being such a dangerous threat, which would also apply to Byakuya here because Byakuya is stronger than Shunsui. So, in Zanpakuto, Shunsui Kyōraku gets the edge. Conclusion and evaluation. Alright. The initial stage of this fight would be with straight sword skill, until Byakuya feels pressured and he would move to Shikai, in which Shunsui would respond in kind by also going to Shikai. Due to his games though, Byakuya would have to make a plan to bait Shunsui in close so that he could stop these games from being so effective. So he would move to Bankai, which would put Shunsui immediately on the back foot. However, as I talked about earlier, I think several of Shunsui's games would allow him to get into Byakuya's safe zone, which is the major weakness of his Bankai. One major one is Daruma-san. Daruma-san, because Senbonzakura would be coming in multiple different directions, Shunsui would have multiple lines of attack to get to Byakuya's blind side. On top of that, you have Kageoni. The shadows would connect from Byakuya's shadow to Senbonzakura, making it one shadow, so he could easily dip into the shadows and again attack Byakuya from behind. However, Byakuya's speed would allow him to dodge these techniques and not really take any damage. But Byakuya wants him to move in. Once Byakuya gets him in close after dodging a Kageoni or a Daruma-san, he would move to Senkei, essentially eliminating the attack pattern advantage and going full offense while trapping Shunsui inside the enclosure of Senbonzakura. His power is now doubled in Senkei, and he could pressure Kyōraku. Due to Kyōraku's sword talent and better martial arts skill, he could narrowly survive an onslaught from him from projectiles and swords. He would use his Heiori and his hat to distract or obfuscate like he normally does in a fight. Senkei now creates an advantage where Daruma-san is useless because the lines of attacks don't lead to Byakuya, Senkei now can nullify the advantage of Kageoni's offense by either making blades fly at Shunsui when he tries to attack Byakuya, or he can send them into the shadow. Kageoni still would be effective defensively though. Iraoni isn't really advantageous to him because they're both wearing the same clothes. Takeoni and Bushogama, again nullified by Byakuya being able to call blades from different directions. Byakuya would effectively have cornered Shunsui here. Byakuya, after analyzing the games, would take advantage of Shunsui's Shikai game of Kageokuri and project his own shadow clone and off guard Shunsui, severely wounding him. Sadly to say though, this would lead to Shunsui using a Bankai, and against Byakuya this is game. Immediately they would share wounds, and this would slow down Byakuya because at this point the only person who had wounds was Shunsui. Shunsui wouldn't be taking any damage from this. And once there, we'd move on to the poisoning, which would severely not only weaken Byakuya's movement and everything else, but his spirit energy would significantly drop. Then we're talking about literally falling into a pit where now being on top of being sick and dying, Byakuya is having his spirit energy drained. This is not good. And even if you want to say that Byakuya would attack in this moment, that would just open up Shunsui to pop his head. Whether it's Shukehaku taken, I would argue he could still maybe use Ika Senjika. I don't think it would be that quick. I think it would take some time. And in that time, I think Shunsui could kill him. I don't see this going Byakuya's way once the Bankai gets activated. Even if Shunsui were to land hits earlier, I don't think it would be significant enough for him to die that the Bankai wouldn't get off. Shunsui only has to use this thread to pop Byakuya's head, and that's game. I believe this victory is the more likely outcome out of 10. Not by much. I would say like 56% or maybe 60% out of 100%. This would be the outcome. The winner is head captain Shunsui Kyōraku. That's the video, guys. Please, if you like the outcome, you don't like the outcome, or simply want to recommend other fights, leave your comment in the section below. Remember to like and subscribe. If you like the content, share my existence with the world. I appreciate it. Love and peace. Y'all have a great day. Bye.